Welcome, everyone. This is the culmination of the Kaliba event experience for COVID. So it's really good to see you all here, and I'm very excited that we get to come together for some cocktails and some food talk and some snacky tunes. And you are welcome to turn on your video. I know we've been really kind of policing this, but I do have security, so please show your face if you're comfortable with that. If not, we
Yeah.
understand.
Show your face and show your
Um, this
bookstore.
is going to be a little bit more free flow than everything else we've done this year. So if you do have questions or comments, raise your hand, make a point, put it in the chat, and we will try to pay attention. So without further ado, Amy, it's true.
Thank you, Calvin. I'm Amy Hordes. I'm the head of sales for Phaidon. I am probably the only head of sales at a major US publisher that does not and will not take responsibility for the Amazon account and the Amazon business. I am all about you guys. And I would ordinarily have seen so many of you at I'll say the Kaliba show, because it used to be I'd be at NCIBA and then I'd sometimes make an appearance at SCIBA, and we had the wonderful and talented Richard McNeese representing Phaidon for many years now, a dear friend of mine who would be there, if I wasn't. But also, I'm often pinging around the state of California on personal travel and things. And if I'm out there for the LA gift show or something, I'm always coming in and checking out, talking to you all. And I really miss being able to come out west. So when we cooked up this idea, it gave me great pleasure to be part of planning it so that I could at least engage with you guys. And I also want to call out Roland Wave. Roland is on Phaidon's PR team, and he is also he masterminded organizing this with the Kaliba team. So we're very happy to be here with you guys tonight to toast independent businesses in this insane time. We've got great people to speak to that. Not, obviously you're independent booksellers, but the conversation around independent record stores and distilleries and restaurants, we're all in this together right now. And I think it's what we found in our prep for this event is, there's so much commonality between the experiences right now. And what's missing, for what's challenging for all of us right now, is recreating that sense of community in these spaces that we, especially you in California, have worked so hard to cultivate the sense of community in your store and among your customers, and bringing people in for physical events. We were talking about last night, if this had been a physical event, my gosh, I mean, the drinks would be flowing, and we'd all be having a great time together, and we'd be thinking about books and talking about books. And it's very hard to channel that, and virtual events are a big, it's an opportunity, but it's also a challenge. And I'm thrilled. I think tonight we can set the bar. We can, literally and figuratively, and celebrate Phaidon's California authors on our fall front list, which is exciting to have authors that are based out where you are. But also just to, take a load off and listen to some fun facts and, have a good time with us. I want to introduce the authors that are part of the conversation, and then I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit, with more detail. Let's start with Adrienne Stillman. Adrienne is the author of our brand new book, Spirited, Cocktails from Around the World. And you'll see these are all the California cocktails in this book. It's a global book, but let me tell you, you are very well represented. Adrienne is also the author of Where Bartenders Drink, which Phaidon published a few years ago. Adrienne, do you want to talk a little bit more about what brings you to the alcohol scene?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, so I'm in Napa Valley. So I'm obviously, in California, in Northern California. I moved out here 7 years ago, and I got into cocktails about 15 years ago. I was living in New York City and kind of discovered the burgeoning cocktail renaissance that was happening at that time, and really fell in love with it from the first sip. And was then able to, in ways that are still kind of incredible to me, finagle my way from a career in finance to a career writing books about cocktails and bars. So that's been really exciting, and love working with Phaidon. And just on a personal note, I love independent bookstores and I'm a loyal patron of the one here in Napa. So really excited to be with you all tonight.
Thank you so much. And we'll come back to that Napa Bookmind relationship later. I want to ask you a couple of questions about the launch. Darin, let's kick over to the authors of Snacky Tunes. Music is the main ingredient. This is, again, this is a really special book to me and to Phaidon. It really kind of embraces the best of Phaidon, which is that it plays at this intersection of different creative media. So I'll let Darin and Khuong and the silent partner Greg, Darin's identical twin, who is on the call but not based in California, so we told him he couldn't be on the panel, although he's more than welcome to pop in. Darin, tell us about you.
So I originally from East Coast Philadelphia, grew up actually 30 minutes from Amy, and lifelong supporter and lover of reading and independent bookshops. Our mom is actually a kindergarten through fourth grader reading specialist. And so we have just always had a deep relationship with books and knowledge and things like that. And our lifelong love of food and music comes from our parents, our mother and grandmothers with the cooking, and our father with the music. So we've always just been absolutely immersed in it. Huge fan of just bookstores in general. I just get so excited, and always have to edit myself on the way out because I just am always arm heavy and loaded with that. I even got my Now Serving shirt on as a supporter of one of my favorite, one of the best stores, and arguably I would say one of the actual culinary community heartbeats in LA. Just so many great authors and things that people have passed through there. And this book is a culmination of a podcast and that we've been doing under the same name, Snacky Tunes, for the last 11 years. We've done about 460 episodes that's brought together chefs, artists, musicians, bartenders, makers, doers, thinkers out of Brooklyn that Greg and I started. And Khuong joined us as a producer on it and a booker about, I don't even know, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't know. Time's like a bit of a flat circle right now.
Yeah, right now time is irrelevant if you haven't figured that out.
And so we've just been, we decided, not to give too much behind it, but we, when the idea came up for the book, we sort of thought we would go through the archives and then quickly realized that we would be doing all unique interviews and stories for this book. And so everything you see in this book has never been published before. The majority, almost all the recipes are original, or at least not been published in book form. Same with the playlists, the narratives, the stories, and everything. So it was, a dream to put it together. More work than we probably thought it would be, but an absolute just fun thing to hold in your hands and to, the right recipe and playlist for any mood.
Great. Yeah, that's my favorite thing about the book is it's and same with Spirited. They're both highly interactive if you think about it. And I think it's, they're meant to be cooked with, they're meant to be read and thought about, they're meant to be, I don't know what the verb is for cocktailing, but they're meant, you're not cooking. What are you doing? Fixing?
Imbibing.
Mixing.
Well,
imbibing.
Eventually, yeah. But first you got to make them.
Mixing.
Okay. What's that?
Mixing.
There you go. Mixologist. Yep. And putting on the right soundtrack. So just for those of you that joined the call a little bit late, Darin has put together a pretty cool, very cool Kaliba soundtrack, a Spotify playlist. Oh my God, what am I, 100 years old? Playlist.
A mixtape.
Yeah.
A digital mixtape, if you will.
There you go. And we're going to share that with everybody after this. And Calvin is kindly posting it on the Kaliba website. So it'll be available for everyone to have fun with.
It's all for California punk bands. And Khuong gave his input too on this. So enjoy. A lot of bands we love.
So Darin, wait, I did want you to touch on your Tastemade, like the other side of your life.
Oh yeah, sure. So I've been working in food media for about 20 years. I started, I'll tell you a really funny story. I have a mentee that I oversee over at Tastemade, where I'm the director of original series. And I was telling her how I got started, which was back in 2001. I was studying television communication at Boston University. And I was like, oh, and so I was like, I should get an internship. So I opened up the Yellow Pages and I saw TV, and under that was a cooking show. And she goes, Yellow Pages? And she was based in London. I was like, oh yeah, it's our phone book. You might call it something different. And she goes, phone book? And I went, I went, okay, you know what a phone book is? She's like, I've never heard. She's like, what's a phone book? And I went, I'm gonna go cry in the corner for like a take two. But so I've been working in food TV for a long time. I am the director of original series at Tastemade. It's a really incredible digital media platform. I've loved food. I've loved chefs. It's a chance for us to tell stories and shine a spotlight, especially on the independent restaurant community, which is suffering worldwide right now, which, you know, like I don't need to explain to you, but to see so many friends and colleagues and restaurants that you love just be decimated by the you know, coronavirus, and just, you know, there's only so much merch and to-go meals that you can buy when you're like, hey, there needs to be a federal response. Anyway, I could go on about that, but I love working at Tastemade. I've dedicated my life to food and to sharing the stories of the people that we love.
And we're going to come back to the podcast. We're going to come back to this idea of, you know, food and music and getting chefs to talk about that relationship and getting musicians to talk about their relationship with food. But Khuong, just give us a little bit of an intro on your side too.
Sure. Hi, I'm Khuong Phan. That's Khuong like King Kong. I'm actually the third wheel of the Snacky Tunes tricycle. I'm actually the most loquacious out of the three of us, yet I do no talking on the podcast. I currently live in Hollywood, so I feel like this is like my big moment. Like this is my close-up. I'm finally getting a chance to use my voice, my sweet, sweet baritone. Yeah, so yeah, Darin and Greg, we're just best friends. We met living in Brooklyn of a certain era, and really hit it off. A lot of simpatico there. As Darin said, I came on as a co-producer of the podcast, I don't know how many every years ago, and now a co-author on the book with them. My day job is I'm still part of the industry. Actually, I'm in-house at Ace Hotels. I head up all of our food and beverage, PR, and marketing, and also work on concept development and strategic partnerships. So yeah, all the stuff that Darin's talking about as far as what's going on in the world, I'm feeling it very intently, as I know all of you are as well, all of us as indie operators in this country. So not to get political, a little frustrated that we don't have a national response to an international pandemic, but hopefully that'll be changing in the next couple days. But yeah, so very excited to be here. I am a first generation Vietnamese immigrant refugee. I'm only telling you that because I grew up pretty modestly, and one of the things that my family could afford was to go to the library. And so books have been a huge part of my life for me and my sisters, and always supporting independent bookstores. I live within walking distance of a wonderful indie bookstore here in Los Angeles.
Which one?
I always mispronounce the name. Chevalier?
Oh, Richard.
On Larch
Chevalier.
Chevalier.
And it was actually founded by Maurice Chevalier, as in, oh, thank heaven for little girls.
Oh.
Despite working in fancy food, my French is terrible. So, but yeah, and then obviously now serving as another local for us. So just really appreciate being here with all of you on this Friday. Let's have a good time. Let's drink some good cocktails and just have some fun.
You know what? That's a perfect segue to Adrienne and her demo for the champagne cocktail. I'm going to hand over to you, but I'm also going to bother you by asking you to talk about specific things that have. So I've spent a lot of time with both of these books for a long time now, but I'm so fascinated by the California content in Spirited in particular, because clearly, you know, you've got a wonderful 2 pages in here on the history of the cocktail, and it's so clear that California was and is still very vital to that. So I'm hoping that while you make the champagne cocktail and talk to us about it, you can also kind of like give a little bit of an overview from the conversation we had last night about, you know, hotels and the gold rush up to now. I just also want to kick you off with this one. You end that section by saying, it has truly never been a better time to be a cocktail drinker. So I'm hoping that by the end of this call, everyone's understands why you said that. And so go for it. Over to you.
All right. So the champagne cocktail, as I think Amy mentioned, is the very first cocktail in the entire book. It's also one of my favorites because it is dead simple, elegant, and really delicious. So it dates from, the first mention of it is in the 1850s in San Francisco. So this is post the gold rush, or, you know, right around the gold rush, a lot of money coming in, a lot of big hotels. You think of those wood paneled bars, a lot of men, and a lot of money to be spent. And it was nicknamed Chorus Girls Milk because it went down so easily. So for anyone who wants to follow along, you're going to start with a glass. Most traditionally it's served in a flute, but in our house we prefer wine glasses. So that's what I've got. Khuong has a tumbler. It sort of doesn't matter. So you're going to take a white sugar cube, put that in the glass. We're going to douse it with some Angostura bitters. You could use almost any kind of bitters that you prefer, and that's kind of a fun way to make this your own. And there's now so many fun artisanal and local bitters. That's kind of a nice way to experiment with this. You want to get it sort of nice and saturated so that you can then, if you can see, the sugar cube is now brown and really soaking up the Angostura, which has a lot of baking spice notes. So you're going to get that like warm sort of cinnamon and clove and a little bit of spiciness. And then we're going to top it with most traditionally champagne. I would not recommend using an expensive champagne in any cocktail. I usually use a sparkling wine from somewhere else in France. So tonight I'm using a Blanquette de Limoux, which is from the south of France. You could really use almost any sparkling wine, but you want something dry. So I would not recommend, for example, a Prosecco, which is a little bit sweeter, a little more fruity. And you want to be careful when you're pouring, especially if you're pouring into a flute, because the sugar will make the champagne or the sparkling wine fizz a lot.
I like Richard's little hand movements to go along with this. That was a beautiful pour. Excellent work.
Thank you. Thank you. And you can also, you might have to do this in multiple stages, again, if you've got a flute. And then we're going to see, I'm just going to top this off a little bit.
Darin's now wishing he'd,
he'd prepared for the cocktail. That's okay. And then for the garnish, we're going to take a lemon twist. So you want to, it's easiest if you cut the very ends off your lemon first, and then using a Y vegetable peeler, you just start at one end and go all the way down to the other. Nice lemon twist. And you want to kind of squeeze it and spritz those oils into the cocktail.
So you even squeeze the rind, not just the, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, if you watch it when you're squeezing it, you can actually see the oils coming off of the lemon peel, and that's where really the aromatics of the lemon are. You also, I just like lost control of my peel of my twist because I'm trying to hold the glass in one hand and do it with the other. Normally you would want to run the peel around the rim of the glass, and that way when you put your nose in it, you get those really nice lemon oil aromatics right in the nose.
Nice. I've never thought about the value of that rind, but there you go.
Adrienne, I've seen it at times when people squirt the rind over like a match and you get a little bit of that, right? Is that another way to do that?
It is, yeah. That would be a flamed twist, which is most often done with orange. What you're doing there is you're basically you take the peel and as you squeeze it, the oils express and ignite in the flame, and so you get kind of a burnt peel flavor in the drink. There's actually, I'm pretty sure it's from Los Angeles.
Oh, I got you. I got
the Flame of Love Martini.
Yes, the Flame of Love Martini.
Yeah, the Flame of Love Martini was a favorite of Dean Martin, and as well as Frank Sinatra, whose wife Barbara said it tasted like heaven. It's on page 299.
You got it? Okay. There are too many California cocktails for me to keep up.
And it actually calls for 3 or 4. To make the cocktail, you put a little bit of Fino sherry in the glass, and then you flame 3 or 4 orange twists before finishing it off with vodka and a fresh orange twist. So it's like redolent of that kind of burnt orange, caramelized.
And this is a picture of it. This is the
Yeah.
flame of love.
Yeah.
It's such a nice show moment. It's like so simple, but you're like, wow.
Yeah. And it's easy. It's easy to do. I explain how to do it in the book. It does have that like definite wow factor for sure.
Beautiful.
To go back to the rest of your question, Amy, so about kind of the history of cocktails in California. So the 1850s and 1860s were really the beginning of cocktails as we know them. That continued up through kind of the turn of the century. And then, you know, things really took a turn for the worse with Prohibition, as one can imagine. In California, though cocktails really came back with with a bang in the 1930s during the Great Depression, and that was when tiki got started. So
yeah, tiki.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good conversation about that. Can I
Yes.
jump in on let me just jump in on the tiki front. So as a Midwesterner, okay, I only have associations with tiki that are cliched and kind of, you know, it's a party situation. I never really stopped to think much about the origin. And then going through the book, we get to the tiki and tropical chapter. And it's interesting, after our conversation last night, I'm aware now that tropical actually helps kind of soften the sort of connotations that come along with tiki.
Yeah.
And I really want you to speak to that, but I just have to say, I love that there are like 4 pages in a row, 6 pages of California drinks, and they're all called grog or fog cutters, and they're all tiny variations of each other. So
Yeah.
it made me really want to bring up tiki in this conversation, because I associate it with California, but our conversation last night, it's so interesting. And Khuong, between the two of you, the conversation about the soldiers that were on the Pacific Front during World War II coming back and all the influences, talk about tiki. But you also, in doing so, I'm dying to know more about Don the Beachcomber.
Absolutely. Well, so tiki, the word tiki comes from it's from New Zealand and the Marquesas. And so Don the Beachcomber, who was born in the Midwest and whose birth name was nowhere near as evocative as his sort of stage name, as you were. So he was born Ernest Raymond Beaumont Gant.
Not quite the same ring as Don the Beachcomber.
Not quite. So you can understand. Yeah, Ernest the Beachcomber, not not quite so catchy. And he traveled the world, including the South Pacific, and really fell in love with the island culture there, and came back to the United States, decided to open up a bar. And he had, in his travels, been collecting a lot of tiki carvings, which are originally, if you picture a tiki mug in your mind, it's that kind of human form, and that was the original tiki and they had nothing to do with drinking. There is, in fact, basically no drinking culture in the South Pacific. There's certainly no cocktail culture. And so he took this kind of beautiful visual landscape of this sort of escapist tropical beach, picture, and combined it, in fact, with cocktails from the Caribbean. So the tiki canon is really based on what we call like the holy trinity of Caribbean cocktails, which is rum, lime, and sugar. And he just kind of made infinite variations on that. And so when you look at the tiki chapter here, it's you'll see there's can be 3 or 4 different kinds of rum and 3 and 4 different kinds of citrus and all different kinds of sweetening agents other than sugar in these drinks. But tiki, it's really the kind of ultimate cultural appropriation, because tiki has nothing to do with the original meaning of the word. And so a lot of there's an increasing or a discussion in the bar community today about moving away from calling it tiki and calling it tropical, which is a much more accurate, in fact, description of what these drinks are, and be more respectful of the original origins of tiki. So
Which leads to the whole conversation that we were having last night about gateway culture and the what California really brings to food and drink and culture in every possible way. This mix of it kind of harkens back to the story that we were talking about last night about the pisco drinks and the ice. And that's another thing that I find really fascinating about California and its relationship to like the evolution of cocktails.
Yeah, well, the pisco sour was created. It may have been created in San Francisco, or it was created in Lima, Peru. There's sort of as most classic cocktails, there's often a fierce debate about the actual origin story. So at that point, there was a lot of trade between San Francisco, California, and South America, and in particular, this was a time pre-refrigeration, and so to get ice, you actually had to go to usually South America, cut huge blocks of ice. They put them on these ships, and then came north to California to deliver them to the port of call. And so the pisco also kind of like jumped on one of these ships and made it up to San Francisco. Was hugely popular. And the pisco sour was like the #1 cocktail in San Francisco for a long time. And I love that story, that kind of example of what you just said, Amy, that the sort of gateway culture of California, and that kind of cultural exchange that we're all so familiar with.
Right. It's always been part, and this is a good segue into the California content and Snacky tunes as well. Are you still explaining the champagne cocktail, or have you completed the champagne cocktail?
I have completed the champagne cocktail. Thank you for checking.
So raise your glass before we start to talk about the gateway culture and what Khuong put into my vocabulary last night, the new manifest destiny. Let's have a toast to all the hard work that you all are doing. I am obsessed with you and obsessed with what you're doing. And I know being in the back room packing up books to ship out to people is not the same as hand selling something and sitting and talking with one of your longtime customers, but we are all hanging in there, and we're going to be there when this is done, and we're going to do all of those things again, and we're going to do them even better. So this is to all of us to get through this holiday, to the independent business people across food, across at all of our paths. So cheers. Roland, where's your drink? Raise your glass.
Cheers.
All right.
Cheers.
And
Yeah.
Roland, I know, has been working on his bar cart, so
yeah,
good.
Oh, Roland, you want to show us? So Roland you're in New York, right, Roland? Oh, it's okay.
All right, you're getting there, dude. The
yeah.
stash, by the way.
Sorry, thank you. I know it's for a Zoom Halloween tomorrow, so.
Wait, what are you going as?
What are you going as?
I'm going as Luigi, and my boyfriend's going as Mario.
I love it.
He's a little more stouter than I am, so he's going to be a great Mario. But
So
yeah,
if we have event planners on the call,
here's the bar
Roland
cart.
is your guy. Oh,
Nice.
there's the bar cart.
You're
Nice.
getting there. You're getting
Nice.
there.
So it's a nice Danish teak bar cart.
It's so Phaidon to talk about the bar cart, the actual bar cart first. I love it. Bravo.
Yeah, real quick, back to the tiki thing. I just want to add something here as an industry person. Yeah, we actually ran into the situation of tiki v tropical, actually, with my work. And there's definitely the cultural appropriation story, which is super important to have, especially right now. But there's also kind of this parsing in the industry of kind of like taking tiki as its own sort of subcategory and maybe like not making it so culturally kind of upsetting to people, and just sort of more as like a tiki lifestyle. Would you say, Adrienne? Kind of folks that kind of have the whole setups and love like exotica music, which, let's be honest, like a pool vibe, exotica, a daiquiri. I grew up in Florida, so like lime, sugar, rum is like all within my kind of like total like world view. And so yeah, I'm all about tiki. I love tiki drinks.
Glamours and Sex on the Beach.
At
least
you're talking, yeah. I went to Florida State University, so I can tell you, I've had quite a few. It's a proud public college kid, a state college kid.
There you go. I want to throw a trivia question out there that kind of brings. We're starting to talk about this, the way that California and you guys have done this to death, but the way that the whole, all of the different influences and immigration streams and things have kind of created what we now, you know, love and worship about California. This is a question. Okay, I'm just gonna ask it. Adrienne, actually, I'm gonna open this up to everybody. Okay. Stevie Wonder and Snacky Tunes contributor took this Southern California native on tour with him as his personal chef. So there's a chef in here that Stevie Wonder took on tour with him as his personal chef. Is it A, Naisha Arrington, B, Curtis Stone, C, Dominique Crenn, or D, Shirley Chung?
I will give you guys a hint that actually won't help you at all, but this person was on Top Chef.
Ooh.
Actually, all those chefs were on Top Chef at some
All
point.
those chefs are on Top Chef, bro.
But
And it ties
there you
in
go.
with-
There's your hint.
I'll give you another hint. All of them were on the radio show as well.
Yes.
So it's, you all know, I mean, you can use context clues here and rule out some people, because Curtis Stone is not a Southern California native. Am I right? He's Australian.
He is from Melbourne, yeah.
All of these chefs are in the book. Dominic Crenn, Northern
Not
California.
even in Southern California.
Not
yeah, Bay
even,
Area.
let's
Well,
not even,
she's also French.
he's also French.
He is
And,
French.
and so it's down to Naisha Arrington and Shirley Chung, both of whom, well, Shirley Chung lives in LA, but was not born there. Oh, I just gave you the
You just gave it away.
Well done, Amy.
I know
Well-
the answer.
Let's go to Adrienne.
This is
Adrienne.
why
Man,
this is Adrienne's fault, because this is her Moscow Mule recipe.
you're
and
I'm
I am
never
blaming-
having you on my team for charades.
blame the beverage.
Giving up the
Blame the
goods that
beverage. But
easily.
it's a segue. It's a segue to Naisha Arrington. That was the whole point of this, because Khuong, you brought her up last night as an example. Jonathan Gold. I mean, let's just start even with Jonathan Gold. What
Sure.
is he said, quote, her food tastes like LA.
Yeah.
Now she is, and you used a term last night, Blasian. She's Black and Korean, correct?
Correct.
And yet her recipe in this book is something I am dying to make, and it's Cali huevos rancheros.
Oh yeah.
And the influences in this dish are myriad, right? So that to me is kind of what we talk about when we talk about California, and we talk about the melange of influences and things. Tell us, Khuong, about the new Manifest Destiny. I mean, all three, Adrienne, Khuong, and Darin, you're East Coast transplants. You chose California.
Yeah,
Correct.
What does it mean to you, and how does it kind of manifest itself in the food scene, in particular in LA, but not exclusively to LA?
Sure.
In
Yeah, I think
generally?
California in general, you know, it's the wide open American West, and the promise of just, whether you were like a homesteader or someone looking to pan for gold or whatever, just the notion of kind of the freedom, you know, you kind of look at like sort of American history, you know, it's like the East Coast, let's be honest, founded by like the worst people, just like boring ass Puritans who just don't want to do anything for fun. And kind of historically, as you move more west, even like, you know, at one point, Ohio was like the Wild West, you know?
Oh, I know. That's where I'm
So,
from. It was the
yeah,
frontier. Yeah.
totally. And so California has always had this sort of like, you know, this kind of like golden promise, or if you're an Asian person like me, Golden Mountain, if you're, you know, looking more easterly. And so, yeah, so Darin and I, you know, we met in Brooklyn. We are of that kind of like North Brooklyn kind of era of, you know, Williamsburg, Greenpoint, Bushwick, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and like 7 years ago, like Adrienne and I moved out here, and then Darin followed kind of shortly thereafter. And we kind of made this joke about the new Manifest Destiny, because a majority of our close friends from New York actually now all live in Los Angeles. And
they're all in the food. It's all in the food and music scene, right?
food, music, creatives, yeah, the writers, producers, like all that kind of creative scene. And it's just because California's always sort of fed that, you know, that notion of like, you can come out here, be yourself, express yourself. Also, and I mean this in the most positive way, like California's kind of like used to failure. And what I mean by that is like in New York, it's gotten so expensive to start anything. It's so difficult that you have to kind of hit like a home run right from bat. But California, again, whether you're like out here because you want to act or write, or again, painting for gold, it's you can come out here and there's room for you to try and to express yourself. And from the food sense, you know, when we were living in New York, you know, we came up literally, Darin and I were at the epicenter of like the Brooklyn sort of food boom and sort of Brooklyn transcending a borough and becoming a brand. And then right when we moved out here, it's just like the whole food scene just started shifting west again. You know, I think historically, you look at California cooking, Alice Waters, Wolfgang Puck, things like that, and it kind of went back to the East Coast. Now it's really firmly on the West Coast, and I think the big reason why is the gateway culture of this state and the fact that you can be Blasian, you know, like Naisha Arrington, or second generation Filipino American, like the brothers who run Lhasa, that they're also in our book, or Shirley Chung, who's like me, a first generation immigrant, or Curtis Stone, who's also an immigrant, Dominic Kren, also an immigrant, you know, France and Australia. And out here, just the multitude of culture, the ability to be free, to be who you are, the incredible produce, and all the great products is really producing this really dynamic food scene. And Jonathan Gold, who you mentioned, Amy, was really kind of at the forefront of that. And, you know, what Jonathan really did that was so important to all of us in the food scene is he took, you know, when you come from the East Coast, your notion of fancy, of what's good food is high-end French haute cuisine. And Jonathan was like, you know what's just as valuable as that piece of foie gras is a really well-made pork and chive dumpling from a hole in the wall in the San Gabriel Valley, and it's worth you going out there. And just speaking personally, you know, growing up on the East Coast, I didn't have a lot of understanding of Asian American culture. I tell people all the time, one of the weirdest things about living in LA for me, and I'm 40 years old, are all the Asians. I'm just not used to being around all
Well,
that.
that's Florida too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then I get out here and it's just this whole explosion of everything. And so to kind of just be a part of that, to work within that, to support all that's happening out here. And it's not just food, it's for us, like, you know, Darin's sitting in front of a painting from one of our really good friends, Jeremy. The art scene out here is fantastic. The music scene is incredible. Design, of course, you know, architecture, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's really like, at least, and I'm speaking very, very personally, it feels like a whole nother golden age for sort of California, especially in the last.
And in light of, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt, but like in light of everything that's happening, you know, we're not going to go into it because you guys are living it. This sort of apocalyptic last few months, I think. And Khuong, if you were not living in LA, I'd be like, oh my God, like you guys are living in it, and you still, that energy is still there, and you still tap into it, and you still feel it, even though it's may not be as like on the surface as it has been. And I think it's really great to hear. And again, I'm an outsider. I've been coming to California my whole life, and it's where I'd live if I didn't live here. But it's so gratifying.
East Coast versus the West Coast vibe. Honestly, it's like, to be frank, like it's corporate on the East Coast. You know, it's institutionalized on the East Coast in a lot of ways, and out here it's not, and it hasn't been. You know, living in LA for me, coming from New York, which is like a 18th century city, you know, of New Amsterdam, and coming out to LA, and all of a sudden it's like it's a city of the 20th century, and certainly of the 21st century. And I think that's. But
yet, I liked what you had to say yesterday about San Francisco a lot, because you kept going back to how San Francisco blew your mind, because
it blew my mind because it's such an older city than LA. I had no idea how old San Francisco was in the context, and then also just to be frank, you know, in the context of just Asian American culture of Angel Island and all those kind of places there, like I'm you know, and literally it's a Golden Gate Bridge. It's the gateway to the West, and to me, it's this vibrant city where, just speaking again personally as an Asian American, like, to know I have friends whose families are 4th, 5th generation Californian and Asian American, because their families came to San Francisco as Japanese or as Chinese, and like where I grew up, it was like everyone was like me, like a 1st generation person. So, you know, and just, you know, it's just an incredible place. To me, it's the real melting pot of America in the real truest sense, and I think you're certainly seeing it across like everything right now, you know, from tech all the way down to literally, you know, our friends who are opening like sandwich shops in Lincoln Heights.
Yeah, no, the sandwich shop thing, I'm all about it. I follow all those LA sandwich shops on Instagram, and it drives me crazy because the photos are so good, and I'm like, ugh. I keep writing back to Jeremy Fox whenever he posts. I'm like, when will you deliver to Philadelphia?
Yeah, well,
I kind of
used to
can't.
work I used to work with Wolfgang Puck, and like, he and Alice Waters really kind of the champions of California cooking. When you come from the East Coast, your notion of fusion cooking is more of a forced kind of thing. But out here in California, it's just natural because you've got Asians and Mexicans and Central Americans. So it's no surprise to me that like Naisha's dish that represents her is like this whole fusion of like Mexican.
I love it. I love it. And lentils and coriander and cumin.
Yeah.
Almost this Indian vibe. That's the thing about the California recipes and music. So just to quickly kind of, tie it back in. The book features 75 chefs that the Snacky Tunes team had not, most of them, Darin, had not been interviewed yet for the podcast. You were able to bring them in as new, like people you'd always wanted to talk to.
The mix of the chefs are friends, colleagues, past guests, and then a lot of research, diversity on all aspects, location, gender, race, everything, age was really important from the get-go. And, there's just some areas we know really well. Like we know the States well, we have a working knowledge of Europe, Canada, things like that. But, I'm not going to pretend that I knew much about Africa as a continent, the whole continent or individual different, countries there. Same with LatAm. I knew a little bit about Sao Paulo because you have like an Alex Atala, Atlanta Riso coming out of that. But, Manu Bafara, who's one of the, emerging chefs in all of South America is in there as well. So we did a lot of research, a lot of cold calling. I mean, look, we went for all 7 continents, but the weather station in Antarctica never got back to us. So we went with 6.
Yeah.
But it was important.
For you, Darin, what was in terms of the Latin America and Africa, or maybe even in terms of California, what for you was the biggest discovery? Like which chef and or which like music, sort of combination really surprised you? And then Khuong, I'm going to ask you that next.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'll go back to Manu. I mean, so it's interesting because I grew up thinking I knew a lot about music, and as I've gotten older, I have a daughter now. It's just like your ability to keep up with music, even with Spotify and things like that, just shrinks. Because sometimes you're like, I just want to listen to the same 10 punk songs that I loved growing up. Like that's what I need right now.
We know Baby Shark really well, the both of us.
Yeah.
We both have young kids, so
Wheels
on the Bus hit.
Even thinking I knew a lot about music was extremely humbling during doing this book. Like I don't know anything, the second you got maybe just to the left of my comfort zone. So, South American music, really deep cuts in African music, even, some of the jazz cuts from Jamie Bissonette or other people like that out of Boston. Just like, I was like, what? Who are these people? And that's the great thing about it. I've been really dedicated to food, so I had a better working knowledge of food and at least knew the majority of the dishes. But even that, like Selassie out of Ghana, who does menudo, she has this Pan-African approach to cooking, and she went around, and when she went around Africa, she collected recipes and like mix CDs and mix tapes. And so I feel like I'm cheating with learning about African music with her playlist, because it really is just like once you go through her playlist and you use that as like sort of like the center part and that's the spider web, you can really get to have a good working knowledge of African music on a whole. And she talks about in her narrative about going to different countries and things like that. So, those, I mean, and it was great to be like, it was a good refresher to be like, I don't know everything. Like, I don't know everything about food. I don't know everything about music. I don't know these stories. And it was very humbling, but like in the most inspirational way.
Yeah, I think, what I tell people, and just so you guys are aware, like my background, I mean, I'm a PR marketing person. So my kind of role with the book rollout is really helping with promoting the book. And, we've been fortunate. It's been on Food and Wine's, best cookbooks of the fall list, and Town and Country picked it as one of their best books of the fall as well. And I'm totally just putting a feather in my cap, by the way. But yeah, I think the thing that really kind of surprised me, and perhaps it's because this book is coming out during this like weird time in the world, and as a person who has personally and professionally built his entire life being around people and not being able to be around them. For me, I think what really kind of took me away and surprised me about the book was just the connectivity of music and food and how it really transcends time, space, all of that. You know, I like had to make a list because as I'm pitching the book, it's like, so so the back of the book, which is really awesome, there's an appendix here, which normally in a cookbook is like all your ingredients and your kind of like staples. Phaidon had this great idea to just put all the artists who were named in the book. So basically, real quick, what I tell my kind of short elevator pitch in the book is, it's an anthology of memories, meals, and mixtapes. It's all these incredible chefs.
That's a perfect description,
Yeah.
honestly, because for me, the personal essays are like
incredible.
they're their own book. Like you could just
Incredible.
have that and not have the added benefit of one recipe per chef and
Yeah.
the song that inspired it and a playlist.
Are you saying that we could have delivered less and still met?
No, because
Still met the
you're
quota to make
Bresnitz,
to get
brother,
forward
and
with
you
it, yeah.
can't deliver less. You physically can't deliver less. You're not
Yeah.
capable of it. No,
Yeah. So to Amy's point, we were contracted to do 50 entries, and we wound up doing 77 entries with a total of 86 participants.
Yeah.
Which was real fun when we handed that in, and they're like, "Well, that's going to change everything from the design to the publication." So thanks, guys. And they said, "How do you feel about cutting out any of the chefs?" And we said, "Absolutely not." They gave us their time and their stories. So
yeah,
you know,
and really personal stories. I mean, Shirley Chung, who we mentioned is in the book, from California, her story spoke to me so personally. You know, she talks about coming to America, being an immigrant kid, being in an ESOL class where she's going to try to learn how to speak English, and she's trying to fit into this culture of the Bay Area. And it's like, it was like R&B music from the 90s. Like that was her like point of entry, you know. And so there's a connection of
the book surprises me over and over again. Sorry, on that front, like
no problem.
Aisha Arrington, the song that inspired the Huevos Rancheros. Of course, I didn't write that down, but there are other ones. Let's see. There are a couple of the California chefs. Dave Barron in Santa Monica chose a recipe that was inspired by Etude number 2 from Etudes from a Piano by Philip Glass, volume 1. Gabriela Camara, you know, Cala, where I have actually had the pleasure of eating once by myself when they opened at like 4:30 p.m.
Nice.
But I love that. When I used to travel for work, and Richard knows this, Richard and I have sat in steakhouses at 4 p.m. and just, you know, that was it. Wrapped up our great day of talking about books and, you know, pit stop on the way home. So Gabriela Camara, she, and again, that's not a good example either. Okay, Dominique Crenn, her recipe was inspired by Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, and then the playlist that she recommends has everything from Edith Piaf, Maria Callas, and Nina Simone to ABBA, Kiss, and Salt and Pepper. If you're somebody who cares about music and somebody who cares about food, this is a dream of a book. Or if you only care about music, or if you only care about food, you're going to find something in here that makes you think differently about one or the other. It's just,
also too, I think if you care about just human stories
and
and the personal side of it, and I think that sense of connection, that sense of like
100%.
Whether you're making someone a drink, there's a physical connection of kind of food, music, and drink. You know, it's like, here, I'm gonna make you this cocktail, I'm gonna make you this dish, or I'm gonna make you this mixtape, or I'm gonna write you this song.
It kind of goes back to the challenge for independent businesses right now, right?
Yeah.
About that,
and it's like
making a cocktail for
someone
is a connection. Selling a book to someone, hand selling a book to someone is a connection.
Absolutely.
Cooking a meal for someone is a connection. You know, I personally, the whole concept of takeout cocktails, I can't do it. I can't do it because for me, a cocktail is being at a bar next to someone or with a book, which is also Richard, again, people that travel a lot and sell books. There's nothing better than that first cocktail because you're surrounded by people you don't know, but you're surrounded by people.
Amy, could I break in for a quick second?
I would love to. And then Richard, I'm going to make you answer the trivia question. So
no,
yeah,
I refuse. But I just wanted to say I did a quick little tour through the index, and I put it in the chat, and it looks like the most citations between the different chefs are AC/DC, Bowie, Fela Kuti, and Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah, and Kendrick is number 1. 12 mentions of Kendrick Lamar, LA's very own Pulitzer Prize winning Kendrick Lamar. Should have won that Grammy over Macklemore, but that's a whole nother subject. For another time. But yeah, no, it's awesome. And then when you kind of see that again, it's like, it doesn't matter where you live, where you're from, what generation you're from. It's like we all connect to this. And Amy, to your point, it's absolutely the same sort of feeling of being able to serve someone or take care of somebody. But I also think it's the feeling that connection engenders. And I think going to your favorite bookstore, for instance, that feeling of being there, that environment that you guys create for everyone who comes and is like a regular, but also whether it's a person, you know, who runs their own bar or runs their own restaurant, or, you know, is like writing songs, hoping that like people, you know, can really sort of share in that, in that as well. So I think I'm going to add like a little extra onto that. So Snacky Tunes, the book, is an anthology of meals, memories, mixtapes, and connections. Because that's really what like it's all really about.
Darin, jump in. You said you want,
Yeah, there's one thing I want to add, and I think it sort of touches on the moment we're living in right now. You know, we wrapped up this book in March, and this book is all comprised of independent restaurants from all over the world. And it's people who share the same ethos as all of you, who get up, and passion's a huge part of this. But also as a customer, whether it's a bar or going out for a drink or going out to get a book or going out to get a meal, you know, the last, obviously there's been a lot of political issues and the Me Too movement and all these things have come out of like, you know, the different restaurant industry, wine industry, things like that. But like, as far as like a golden age of restaurants and independent businesses, like we just went through, like the last 5 to 10 years were unbelievable. Like the fact that you could drop into almost any area in California now or any city in the world and find an independent bookstore that you love and find an independent restaurant or get a cocktail, like it's, you just take it for granted. You know, I know, you know, I did. I was like, oh, I'm going to San Francisco. Well, I can go to a bookstore and I can get a drink and I can get a meal and I can get a high-end meal, or I can go to a pop-up or something like that. And it's gone. Like it is forever changed. And hopefully we'll get back there. I mean, I think we all remember the 2008 financial collapse, and like we thought, how do we get back from that? And we all got back there and we came back stronger than ever. But I think what this book does, and same with Spirited, and what I love about that book, like it really just, it captures this time of coming together, you know, and like hosting each other or being hosted or making something for someone, recommending a book, recommending a drink. Here's a song I love. Here's a story I like. And we got in under the wire. I think if we had waited 6 months to put out these books, we wouldn't have had the same books. But it's like, here's the demarcation. March 2020, it's when we wrapped up. It's when a lot of things wrapped up. And like, we hope that people look back on these 2 books and these moments and the stores that are now shipping departments. And it's like, we go like, okay, like, can we go back? Or I don't even remember what we're going back to. And then you like read a passage from this book, or you make a cocktail, or you check in with your fellow bookseller and you're like, okay, here's the touchstone. We'll get back to this.
Totally. In fact, with that, in the spirit of that, Adrienne, I would love for you to touch on what you cooked up with Napa Bookmind to launch the book, because I think this could be easily replicated with other Kaliba member bookstores. And then I would like the Snacky Tunes guys to talk through the tour that they have going. I know, hooked up. Yeah, it's what I do. It's never ever on purpose. And talk about your tour, because I love what you're doing with Omnivore and Oxfam. So Adrienne, talk us through Napa Bookmind, that relationship, what you did. And then if there are booksellers on this call or that are going to watch this recording later that would be interested in replicating it, I think it's super smart. So go ahead.
Yeah. So my local bookstore here, Napa Bookmind, I've, kind of reached out to them and was like, hey, do you want to do originally we were going to do it in person, of course, but there went that idea. And so I partnered up with them and with a local bar that has a cocktail in the book called Grand Electrica. And we're actually, right after this call, I
love Tamer, by the way. Sorry.
Yes, Tamer owns Grand Electrica. I actually know him from New York. There's a Grand Electrica location in Brooklyn as well.
Where?
So yeah, so Tamer's coming over. We're gonna demo some cocktails for a group of folks here. I believe we're expecting about 40 or 50 people to tune in. And the ticket options were, you could buy a copy of the book and or margaritas to go from the bar, and their specific margarita recipe is featured in the book. So it was a really nice kind of tie in to both of those small businesses.
It's a great margarita too. Let me just tell you.
It's a really, yeah,
it's a really good one.
It's a carrot ginger margarita. It's delicious.
Oh, wow, that is very California to me. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, and I mean, but in terms of replicating the event, there's no reason that you don't have to like find a bar that's featured in the book. You can just, you can pick any cocktail. You can do the champagne cocktail, which I've demoed for you this evening. You can pick sort of any other drink that that someone wants to make, and I think it's a really nice way also to partner with. My goal in part of my goal in doing the event was to bring business to local businesses who I love, and want to help them to engage with their customers as well. So I'm really looking forward to it, and yeah, I would be delighted to chat with anyone on this call or any other booksellers who want to recreate something similar.
And then Roland, to some extent, we're able to, as Phaidon, to provide assets and things to support that. I mean, we're there in the background, right?
Absolutely. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, it's okay. I just want to say, because I mean, it's Adrienne, we love it. It was your initiative. I think that's the way we're all working right now, is like authors are taking initiative, booksellers are taking initiative. We're in the background to give you the assets you need to run with it. But Adrienne, I love it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more on that front with you, and I'm excited about it. Now, last before we wrap up, and I'm sorry we didn't have questions, but I feel like you've all been typing in the chat room and you're all engaged, and we very happy to hook you up with the authors, and if you have questions, we can make sure that they get answered.
Yeah, we can hang out for a bit too, Amy, if you want to run.
Okay, if other people can, that's great. But talk to us about your launch tour, because I think it's really special, and it also, to a little bit like what Adrienne's doing, it's involving local businesses and actually giving some proceeds back to the restaurant. It's the coalition. What is it? The international. I never remember the name of it.
It's the Independent Restaurant Coalition here in the States.
Independent Restaurant Coalition.
So I want to give first credit to Greg, who's the silent partner on this call, because he did a lot of work and heavy lifting on this tour.
100%. Yeah.
Built the website and pivot. I mean, look, we were lucky enough. Like I said, we wrapped up in March. We had the plane tickets booked. We were coming to New York. We were going to Paris. We were going to London. We were like, let's go with some meals. And then it's like, oh, we're not allowed to leave the country. And so we're like, well, we want to do something, and we want to support local charities and local bookstores, because we are big believers in the independent bookstore. And so we booked a multi-city international tour. Every event has a local bookstore, independent bookstore, chefs from that area, and then we tied it with a musical guest as well. So we kicked it, or we tried to tie it with a musical guest. Sometimes it was just a chefs or a writer. So we kicked it off at Now Serving on our pub date on the 14th with Jeff Gordonier and the Valdez sisters from Home State in LA. And then we are doing the next one in LA with Pretty Mystery, who's in the book as well, and Tal from Tal and the Get Down, Stay Down, and it's in partnership with Oxfam as well.
It's a San Francisco one with Omnivore, technically.
And I was gonna get Omnivore. And so the idea was just that, like, here's some programming, right? We have a great conversation. We bring what we can bring to the table with chefs and musicians. We shine a light on the bookstore. We shine a light on this. Like, the only people who are getting access to these events are independent bookstores. Like, we are not offering this up to any sort of like corporate partners or partner like that. Like, this is literally just something that we've reserved for the people who, make up what we love. And we put together a tour.
But also who completely understand this target audience.
Yeah,
100%.
It's such an indie bookstore book and indie music store book.
Yeah. I mean, we could do this. We could do it with independent record stores. It's same in many ways. And so we're pretty much tapped out for 2020, but we're starting to talk about partnerships in 2021. And so if there's someone in California, if you guys want to do something or something special, like, we're down. We're pretty loose and having
the conversation is never
a party thrower, so it makes it a lot more fun for us to be able to do something. So,
Calvin, do you have any opinion about all that? Does it, you feel like if it's a right event, it's not, I've always said a backlist event can be more amazing than a frontlist event.
I agree with that. Plus, I like the idea of partnering with our local restaurants.
I love that too. Or maybe partnering with a local record store. Like there's another way to think about it for Snacky Tunes. Yeah, I mean,
If there's alcohol and books involved, I'm in.
Yeah, and then also too, if we're able, for the now serving one, they're able to record it, and give us the audio. So we just.
Oh, Khuong, you're frozen.
Oh yeah. So what we did is we have been recording all the audio from all of the events, and we released them as special edition podcasts. So we did it for Now Serving. We did it for Orchestras for the New York event, and we'll do that for you. Like we pretty much have free range on who and what we put on the show, and so it's it's like Jurassic Park. It's an amber forever. It's on the internet.
Nice.
Michael Crichton reference. I don't know if you guys know him. He's like an up and coming guy. So check him out, Michael Crichton. He's. But it's like the great thing about this, and because we've really fought so hard to stay independent all these years. I mean, we're doing it for 11 years. Is that like we wanted that flexibility? Like we wanted to be able to say like, okay, we're going to do this tour. We're going to do this book. We're going to do a book tour and turn the book tour into episodes on the podcast. We're going to make custom art. We're going to do whatever. Like, we're going to meet great people and turn it into something fun and cool. And it's just that independent nature has just always driven us. And it like hanging on to that is just so important.
When you talked about the recession in 2008 and how we all thought certain things were never going to come back, and they did. I just have to say, and for those of us that have been in the book business for a long while, and there are people on this call who have, the death of independent bookstores was already being, bandied about when Amazon, launched, and when B&N started. I'll never forget the panic when B&N started discounting New York Times bestsellers 20% off. Everyone's like, the death of independent retail. As long as people need people, you're in the right business. And It may not feel like that right now, but we're going to get there. Let's open it up for questions.
Would people that need people be the luckiest people?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, they are. And so in that spirit, does anyone have any questions? And if so, just shout them out. We're here.
Yeah, also real quick, Darin dropped our Spotify account for Snacky Tunes into the chat.
Yeah, guys, you should definitely.
Every single playlist from the book is there. So,
but not the playlist that I made specifically for you for.
By the way, did we drop that in? Did you drop that one in too, Darin? Let's get
that earlier, right? And Calvin, you'll
some
grab
good
that.
California punk rock.
I'll grab that. We have
So in spirit of California punk rock, Richard, I'm sorry, but this is a question you are going to have to answer. No, you'll know it. You're good at this.
I doubt it.
This tall tale tome of punk rock history was a touchstone for Snacky Tunes. Is it A, Our Band Could Be Your Life? Is it B, Meet Me in the Bathroom? Is it C, Please Kill Me? Or is it D, We Got the Neutron Bomb? They're all real books, I think.
They're all
real books. All
real books, and they're all about the different punk scenes.
Which one inspired Snacky Tunes?
One we lived.
Let me repeat. A, Our Band Could Be Your Life. And Richard, I can't wink, but I will find a way to signal the right answer to you.
Well, no, don't.
He knows. See, I knew it. Okay, go ahead.
I don't know, but I tell you the one I would say.
Okay. Which one you would say? Let's hear it.
Which one you would say, Richard?
Please Kill Me.
Yes.
Boom! That's the one.
Good. Very, very good.
It's name checked. There is no subtlety. It's name checked in the forward.
Yeah.
That book is
okay. You know what? We'll take what we can get. I'm going to throw a couple more out there. These are good. And I realized I opened it up to questions and then I started talking. Does anyone have any questions? If so, genuinely physically raise your hand because I can see you, most of you. All right. We're going to do a little bit more trivia and then we're going to call it a night.
I have a question. Sorry. I have a question for Darin and Khuong. For your events, for your tour events, are you doing those in person? Like you're traveling to the...
No,
I
wish we were, trust me.
Your Now Serving event, you were all virtual.
And Phaidon's been a really huge help in all of that. And I think working with independent bookstores as well and making sure they've been sort of set up. I mean, we kind of, just because we're, Greg especially, has been really kind of driving hard and kind of getting these things.
Greg,
getting
put your
kind of
camera
track laid-
on.
Getting
Greg,
the track laid
camera
for us.
Greg,
and
you gotta
then
put your camera on right
having a
now.
wonderful publisher to
Darin,
come in and to help with the technical support and all that. And, Roland Roland, that mustache, dude, I am so jealous. As a 40-year-old man, I am incapable of growing adult facial hair. And I did Movember for 1 month.
That did not work.
Last year. Man, so good.
What did
Hey,
it
Greg. This is Greg.
There's Greg, you guys. That's Darin's twin brother, Greg, the one who clearly is getting all the credit for a lot of great things behind this. Greg,
And
so
well deserved.
full disclosure, Greg and I lived on the same block in Brooklyn, and I would be walking to the subway to go to work, and Greg would be out walking his dog. We'd bump into each other, and we would talk about the list of chefs for Snacky Tunes. And I still remember like standing right by McCarran, and I was late for work and I didn't care because we were, hashing it out and which international markets, were, you guys should take a look at. And it's a labor of love for all of you. Greg, you want to say anything while you're here?
Just thanks to Amy, who's been a huge help at connecting. She's the one that actually secured all the independent bookstores for the event. So we just, big thanks to that. And like Darin said, if there's anything we can do with any of you to support independent bookstores or do events with you in 2021, please just get connected with us. We'd love to do something. And thank you for attending this on a Friday.
Yeah. And speaking of thanks, I'm so glad you chimed in, Greg. Greg is also a New York transplant who is now living in Louisiana in hurricanes, and
He is actually, Greg, why don't you talk about it, because you are doing the one physical event of the tour.
Oh yeah, you are.
He calls it the other LA, and we're like, no, Darin and I live in LA, you live in Louisiana. Let's be clear. Where's Greg? Yeah, Greg is actually doing one physical event, in person.
So it's a social distancing signing. It's just, it's a good setup. It's a good test case to see what we can do physically. It's taken everything to us as social people to like be tied to our chairs and not like, I was like, I'll go down to Now Serving and I'll do it from the bookstore. And, they're like, no, because
LA,
the bookstore is big. Weird cooties, Darin.
Computer screen. So that's not, it's not going to work.
So it's like,
it's actually work out better because
lockdown.
Yeah. I mean, and we get attendance from all over, it's like,
I think a physical event at Lhasa with Now Serving in Lhasa, and Richard and I are the co-hosts. That's going to happen. That's going to be a physical event for this book sometime in the future.
Yeah.
It's right across the way from.
It's a 40-foot walk, probably, maybe, something like that from those.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll all be back in person.
Get there. But Adrienne as well, if you want to chat strategy at another time, let us know.
Adrienne, I have a question. I got a question for Adrienne, actually. I mean,
so does Richard. Okay.
Okay, hold on.
Khuong first.
Okay, so we had to gather just like over 70 recipes, and when I heard how many you had, I was like, wait, what? Like, I was super nervous. One, how did you get those recipes? And two, like 600, like what is your, like, you have any favorites? I mean, you gotta, did you test them? You had to test them all, right? Like, you had to.
How are you still standing after testing them all?
Yeah, how are you not like a belligerent alcoholic at this point?
Yeah, right. Well, ironically, I actually even was not drinking for a portion of the time that I was writing the book, which was like the height of irony. But there's over 600 recipes in the book. I think the official count is 610, but if you count all the variations, it's like probably double that. So, my book's different from your book in many respects, but one of which is, this includes classic cocktails and, like the martini, the Manhattan, the old fashioned that are not, they've been published in many other times before. So it's, I think it's just a different, totally different approach, but there's, I spent a lot of time with books. I have a extensive cocktail library at this point, and a lot of time talking to bartenders about, what needs to be included in this book. What are the, both the sort of hallmarks of the sort of classic cocktail canon, and what are the really important modern drinks that should be included, that deserve attention.
I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask you about the modern drinks. I know Richard has something he wants to say. Richard, why don't you go, and then I can always come back to that.
I just wanted to say that, as someone that has, bunches of cocktail books myself, from, the Savoy cocktail book, on up. I was really impressed by your pulls, and I liked, a lot of the classic drinks. I mean, even things that, Bit Rusher say, like, Harvey Wallbanger,
Oh my God, the Harvey Wallbanger story in here might be my favorite.
And
really, the way you told it,
that you pulled, like recipes from Charles Baker's South American Gentleman's Companion, which is a great book. But so my simple question I'll get to, but before I do, I just want to show this picture that I've been staring at. Look at the garnish on this drink. It is absurd. This is a Poet's Dream, which is gin, vermouth, and Benedictine. And so how many books did you go through? And, what was the do you have any idea? And what were your criteria for inclusion? Some of the recipes, like in the Savoy, are kind of creaky and not to today's taste,
Yeah, well, that was definitely one of them, was that it needed to be still kind of, relevant and something that you could conceivably order at a bar where the bartenders are familiar with sort of the classic cocktail canon. The other, especially getting into more modern cocktails, was that I wanted, because I could easily have done 3 times as many recipes just based on, well, that's a yummy cocktail. But I wanted it to be a little bit more meaningful. And so I chose recipes that are really rooted in a time and place, or reflective of a local cuisine or culture. So there's one of the, kind of craziest recipes in the book is from Hong Kong. It's the awamori lemon tea, and it's inspired by lemon tea, which is just black tea and lemon, which is served very popular in Hong Kong from the British colonial era. And this bartender, Jay Khan, who's actually a 3rd generation, or I'm not sure which generation, but his family is Pakistani in origin. He lives in Hong Kong, and he created this drink that it uses a awamori, which is kind of like a sake, but different from Japan, and a tea. He made black tea infused vodka, like lemon syrup, and it's this sort of alcoholic black lemon tea riff. And I love that he was inspired by this really common, very simple drink in Hong Kong. So that was really the criteria that I worked from.
Besides a Harvey Wallbanger, how many other drinks in there actually use Galliano? That's like, to start making a Harvey Wallbanger, you got to like first do this, like blow all the dust off of your bottle of Galliano on the corner of your bar. I mean, I happen to have a bottle of Galliano, but like I also love Harvey Wallbangers, by the way.
I mean, there's nothing not to love about a Harvey Wallbanger
when it comes to cocktails.
Even me.
So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 7 drinks. 7. Yeah. So there's actually the index in Spirited is very useful for this. The book is actually organized, which I think is interesting to point out. It's organized by cocktail style. So unlike other books, which are often organized by like in alphabetical order, often, which is I find like totally not useful. This is organized so you can find sort of like with like. And then in the back of the book, you can find there's an alphabetical index and a index by ingredient. So Galliano is used in the Barracuda, Fernando, Golden Cadillac, Golden Dream, Harvey Wallbanger, Jump Up and Kiss Me, and the Yellow Bird.
Those all sound like cocktails, and also, perhaps I start a detective series of /detective.
I love that plan. Yes.
Barracuda.
Yeah, exactly. Get Nancy Wilson to write the forward to that one. That'd be a good one.
That is one of my karaoke songs. Just saying. I digress. Sorry, go ahead, Khuong.
Oh no, I'm just all about, these cocktails. I love a great name for a cocktail. So those are all
for sure.
fantastic names.
That's a whole other competition that we'll have at our next Kaliba event. We will vote on the best cocktail names in the book. There's no
I look forward to it.
There's no harm in that. Calvin,
Yes,
we could keep talking all
I
night.
know. We're
Here are the rules.
almost 20 minutes over.
Oh, boy.
Lots of few
Okay.
people. I would say anyone who wants to go can go. Anybody who wants to stay and just keep drinking, we'll stop recording.
Ooh, Calvin, is that a promise? Just kidding.
That's a promise.
But before we stop recording, I really want to make sure that I thank the right people. Obviously, the authors, Adrienne, Darin, Khuong, Greg, Jeff Gordonier, I honestly, his participation in the Now Serving event was so interesting to me, and I could listen to him talk forever.
Yeah, one of the forward authors and also LP from Run the Jewels for any hip hop fans out there.
That's I was just gonna say, and I'm glad you said it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he's obviously like the contributors to this book are off the charts, and I want to thank all of those of you that participated tonight. I want to thank Richard, obviously, for being the face and voice and soul of Phaidon on the West Coast. It means everything to us. I also obviously want to thank Calvin and Anne and the Kaliba team, because what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you guys are going to come out of this in such great shape. There are 8 Phaidon books in your Kaliba holiday catalog, which makes me very happy.
Which has landed and should be being inserted shortly.
Yeah, and you and I work together really closely on the selection, so I think it's a thoughtful mix of books that speak to the California book consumer as much as to the booksellers. And Roland, obviously, you are driving all the fabulous things that are happening with Spirited and Snacky Tunes and other books. You are a joy to have on our team. So I just want to thank everybody, and I want to thank the booksellers that are on the call still, that were on the call. Hut, God bless, everybody that is the soul of Kaliba historically. Love that it's being recorded, love that this is something that other booksellers can tap into.